Playing at the Longacre Theater on Broadway. It's currently in previews and opening night is October 16th. It's a limited run, playing through the beginning of January, so you're going to want to see it now because I guarantee after you see it once, you're going to want to go back. I've seen it 5 times. Let's start with you, Mr. Rokicki, and go down the line, introduce yourself and what your role in making or being in the show is.
Hi gang, thanks for having us. Thanks Laura. My name is Rob Rokicki. I'm the composer and lyricist for the show.
My name is Joe Trace, and I'm the book writer for the show.
I'm Stephen Brackett, I'm the director. I'm Chris McCarroll, I play Percy.
I'm Kristen Stokes, I play Annabeth Chase.
I'm Julia Javier, I play Grover and Mr. D. I'm Jalen Steele, I play Sally and others.
I'm James Hayden Rodriguez, I play Luke Castellan.
I'm Sarah Beth Pfeiffer, I play Clarice and others.
And I'm Ryan Knowles, and I play Chiron and others.
I have to say that the others are such an amazing part of the show, and I just want to give a special shout out to all of your dressers who handle all those costume changes, because I think there's some people up here who have like 18 to 20 costume changes, so those others are no joke. All right, let's start at the beginning. Rob and Joe, when were you first aware of the Percy Jackson books and brand?
I love YA and I love fantasy, so I was all about them when they first started coming out. I was too old to be, you never too old to read them, but I read them all, and when I found out that there was a possibility that they could be turned into a stage show, I was like, I will sword fight anyone to write that.
I heard of them through Joe, actually, when I found out about this being a project, and then I voraciously read them all because they were amazing. So I was so excited.
So it sounds like someone came to you, or an organization came to you and asked you to be a part of this, or asked you to submit for it. How did that work?
Yeah, so TheaterWorks USA, who, the sort of weird, bizarre story of the show is it began as an hour-long version that was, that toured the country to schools and stuff. And TheaterWorks USA, who does these shows, they have this mission statement of bringing theater to people who ordinarily wouldn't get to experience it. They do a lot of book adaptations. So even though the rights to do Percy Jackson on stage seemed an impossible thing to get, through the sort of the mission, they were able to convince Rick Riordan and his team that we should give this crazy idea a go. And so back in 2011, I sat down and had dinner with Rick, and it was to be is this thing gonna happen? Can we do this? And we got permission to try and see if we could make this turn his 400-something page fantasy book that's the first in a series of 5 books, that's the first in a series of 3 series, into an hour-long musical.
Does that mean that there will be 14 more?
We will keep writing them until we're 300 years old.
Very old by the time we're done, but okay.
So Rob, how did you go on board? You had to submit.
So I submitted songs for this, and a bunch of songs, actually 3 of which I think haven't really changed throughout the course of the show, which has been interesting. I was recommended to submit songs through our mutual friend, a guy named Joe Iconis, who wrote a little show called Be More Chill. This guy, directed by that guy. They needed rock music, and I was like, I do that. And it was a blast. Joe had given me a play treatment first, and I immediately knew, I see how that could work as a song. I get this. And I think the first song I adapted was a song called Strong, between Sally and his mom, and that's the song I think that got me the job. And I think it was one of the first scenes that you may have also worked on too. We were just, regardless, I feel it was the mother-son relationship was really important to us, and getting the tone right.
Especially when mom says normal is a myth. Well, for the cast, had any of you read the books before you became involved in the project?
Me.
Yeah.
We all know Terrell.
You almost leapt out of your chair. Tell us the story of you falling in love with Percy Jackson?
Yeah, I was very much in the age of like, I just missed the Harry Potter kind of bump, and my sister was so protective over that series that I was not allowed to read it. And so I was going into middle school, and I was a little like 5th grader about to be a big boy, and it was part of the summer reading, the required summer reading for that summer. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take this seriously. I'm gonna read this book instead of Sparks Notes again. Right? And so I read it, and then I just fell in love with the characters. I was always kind of like this weird person. I was just a little too loud, a little too energetic.
Did you say what?
It's because your brain is programmed for ancient Greece.
Yeah, and then I fell in love with the books. I found myself in these characters, and it became this series that I not only found really interesting, but also found really relatable. And then I fell in love with it, kept reading on it. I was actually, someone has used it against me for blackmail once.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to tell us the details of that.
It was when Battle of the Labyrinth just came out, and someone, I guess, was being like, they thought I was being really annoying that day particularly, and said, if you don't shut up, I will tell you who dies.
Just in case anybody in this room has not gotten that far, let's
I won't
not,
say who.
yeah, no spoilers today.
But that was, and I was like, all right, you win. Okay, I see you. And I was like 3rd on the library list, and he had bought the book, and I was waiting to read it from the library because I didn't have that kind of money at that time. And so I was like, that's me.
Did you specifically relate to Grover, or did that come later once you were cast?
No, I think I've always been a Grover. His relationship with food was always the gateway for me. And everyone in the cast can attest that like food is like my #1 like thing. It's always at the top of the list. We get to a new city when we were on tour, and I'd be like, where are we eating? What's for dinner? So yeah, it's always been kind of a huge part of my life and my adolescence, and it's been insane that it continues to be a part of my life.
Yeah. Chris, I'm curious from Percy Jackson himself. There's a line in the show about when they're all singing around the campfire, and you have to say like, "Oh, geez, something like I shouldn't sing. I'm not a good singer." Was there any part of you that worried that the audience that loves the book so much would have trouble with the idea that it was being made into a musical? And just for the record, he can sing.
No, I actually think that like the story actually lends itself to the musical art form, I think, more than most other stories, because it's these seemingly normal kids with these powers they can't control, and like what better way to heighten a character in a story than to like make them break out into like rock songs when they're emotionally bubbling over. So I actually thought that was like one of the strongest devices that we could possibly use for these characters that aren't like normal kids. Usually when kids would cry and have a tantrum, we have rock ballads. Like, so no, I was never nervous about that. I always thought that was one of the most seamless, easy to integrate transitions in our show, to go from speaking into singing. Totally. And with this score, oh my gosh, it's like...
Kristen, you've been with the show longer than any other performers. Can you talk about the journey that the show has taken and what's changed for your character and just from the show as a whole?
Oh gosh.
You have to pull out, I'm just saying.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, it went from being like, Kristen, why don't you climb on, this person's shoulders and pretend to be the Minotaur, to now we have like a full-on like monster puppet. So like evolution, I think for me, specifically with Annabeth is her journey of Annabeth has always kind of owned who she is. She's not afraid to just kind of like be very blunt and speak her mind and be the smartest person in the room. And I almost had to unlearn those conditionings of society in order to fit into what Annabeth is like naturally be. This idea of like, well, I shouldn't be the first one to speak up, even though I know the answer. I should like soften that edge or something. And Annabeth doesn't have that because she's just been at camp and she's she's like fully formed and ready to go. And so that was something that I had to learn. Instead of having the tendency to kind of like soften her edges, I had to lean in and let her harden mine. And so that was kind of like the biggest evolution. And it's taken 5 years, coming up on 6, to really fit into that. And also like what's going on in the world, it's all been like a really big lesson for me. And I've grown a lot with Annabeth as a person.
And I know Sarah Beth, you also have been with the show almost as long.
Yeah, she still has me beat by 1 reading.
Was it really just one day?
Well, like they did, I think, a non-staged reading of the original hour-long script that she was in and I wasn't, but then the next workshop I was on board and have been ever since.
So basically, you've both been there since the beginning.
Basically.
If you had heard at that first workshop you were in that the show would eventually be going to Broadway, what do you think your reaction would have been?
I would have assumed that was impossible. I mean, it's such a testament to, like, when you're, as an artist, sometimes it can feel like you're just hurling your heart and soul and work out into a black hole, and you feel like you're never going to see any of it come back to you. And the thing is that, you do have to put a lot of yourself and your heart and your soul out there and work really hard and just keep faith that eventually something will come flying back out at you, and it might be your Broadway debut from the Theater Works workshop that you did in 2014. It's really cool karma, I have to say.
All but one of these actors are making their Broadway debuts. It's pretty rad. How did you get involved with this project, and what were your first instincts as a director with this material?
Yeah, I knew Joe Trace from a theater called Ars Nova, and so when they were looking for a director, Joe brought me in to pitch for the show, and that was my exposure to the novels. And I read the first novel like overnight, right? And I just fell in love with its imagination, its heart, its a sense of humor. Everything sort of spoke to me. And it's not every day that you get a script that says, Chiron steps out of a wheelchair and becomes a centaur. And literally in the stage direction it said, "Good luck, director." And so like that was in the first draft that I got. And
it's your very own exit pursued by a bear.
Yeah, totally. And I think once I read that stage direction, I was like, okay, they get it. Like they understand that this is like a slightly impossible thing to do, especially since we made it to originally tour in a very tiny van, right? So we knew that this was going to be a show that didn't have big, huge, changing scenery, that we wanted to capitalize on the audience's imagination to participate in the spectacle that was unfolding in front of them.
You couldn't actually bring the back half of a horse.
No, yeah. Not only that, but like with a very limited, small amount of cast. So like we couldn't spare any one of them to be the back of the horse, right? And so it was just a really nice meeting from the get-go. Where I could tell that they really understood the material and had a deep love of the material. I was hooked, and I'm very happy that they chose me.
I'm so glad that you have kept so many elements of allowing the audience, trusting them to use their imaginations. There are some things that have gotten bigger as you go from a tiny van to a massive Broadway stage, but there's so much that we are still allowed to see the theater being made. And I think that there are some productions more than others give the audience that trust. So I'm glad you've kept it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a really important part of it for us because we wanted especially to allow room for people who loved the books and had their own thoughts about how everything looked and felt like, that there was room for that take in our version, right? So it asks the audience to fill in the blanks to create the image in front of them.
So let's talk about those features like being half horse? What's the kind of imagination that goes into the role of the actor when you have to play something that is, mythological? Ryan?
Watched a lot of horse videos on YouTube.
Did you? That's the way you trained?
Yes, I did. Well, that's the thing is that it's a team effort, and we have Steven, we have Patrick, our choreographer, and it was really just, rehearsal was like playtime. Like, all right, so we're gonna go in this direction with costume, and then even that got changed as we continued further. And so really it was us playing around with how to physically suggest a half man, half horse, even though it wouldn't necessarily be exactly that you were seeing. So really it was Patrick coming up and giving notes about where to horse walk, where not to horse walk, what kind of horse walk. Is it a proud horse walk or a somber horse walk? But yeah, so it was great to work with everybody in the rehearsal process. I think that's why we had so much fun in those few weeks.
Any of the rest of you want to talk about, I don't want to say silly, because they actually in the world of the show are totally normal, but that as actors, moments of features that feel silly that you've completely embraced?
I just remember us in this, before first preview, I was so deeply terrified. Because when we were in the studio, these moments, a man walking out of a wheelchair, out of costume, with a piano going, I was like, this is either going to work or it is not. And then that first preview when we had the lights and it all came together and Brackett was just stalwart the whole time being this is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And everyone just freaking got it. But the amount of trust that it took to get it to that point when it didn't have all the glitz and stuff was amazing. And I think one of the biggest accomplishments our show did was trusting these ridiculous moments in times when there wasn't a ton of confidence built in that was gonna work. And somehow Brackett knew it was going to work, and we were just okay, I hope I don't feel so dumb holding a foam seashell that I just took out of my backpack and blow into it. So so much trust, but I think all those moments, I think for Ryan, for Sarah Beth, she's the voice of a squirrel.
I will chime in one particular moment of collaboration and utter silliness. I play a dolphin in Act 2, basically because Poseidon has to come in on this traveling staircase and someone has to push it. So why not a dolphin? And so I came up with my best dolphin impression, and then the staircase unit kind of has to lock, which sort of takes another beat out of the scene. And so when we were in tech for our off-Broadway run of the show, Brackett was can you just do another dolphin call while you're locking the staircase unit? And I was okay. And so to be honest with you, sometimes on the best nights, that gets actual applause.
She gets excellent applause!
Dolphin applause? Is it for paying audiences only, the dolphin cry, or will you give us a little, all right. But you have to pay to hear the squirrel, okay? Meanwhile, Jalen, your main character, the mom, is actually a very realistic mother-son, especially teenage child relationship. You have some other moments where you get, you're
to be mythological.
Yeah, you have some mythological moments, but I think that amidst so much that could kind of make milk come out of your nose if you were drinking milk in a Broadway theater, I don't know. But there's this sincerity and this truth that really rings true. Can you talk about developing that mother-son relationship with Mr. McCarroll? Oh my gosh, it looks so embarrassing. What is going on?
I will say, in the show, because we have so many mythological characters and out-of-the-box characters, that I did want to keep Sally the most real, the most normal, the most, well, quote-unquote normal. But I just wanted to make her a real person so that...
Normal is a myth.
Exactly. And I wanted to keep her someone that people could know and relate to and find sort of their mom in that. I know a lot of times I would call my mom and be like, well, mom, da, 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 and I would just hear her answers and kind of say, you know what, that's who I'm going to base it off of, because she is very comforting, because who would choose a business like this to be in? But I mean, I'd be like, Mom, I don't know if this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and she'd be like, you know what, this is your journey, this is what you're doing. So I would draw sort of things from that and just kind of trust in the aspect of knowing that she's the real person there. But I will say with Chris, in developing our mother-love relationship there, I used to do this thing where I'd play with his hair during our scenes, and he would go, but then I also realized, oh, he's like a 12-year-old doesn't want their mom playing in their hair and things like that. So it's been a growing relationship, you know.
She would like pick lint from like the carpet. Like I would like have this whole scene and there'd be like something in my hair and she would spend the whole song like getting my hair nice. And so like after like 2 measures of music, I was like, Mom, stop it. And she was like, I'm sorry, there was like something in your hair. And I'm like, I was totally in character. I'm like, you only get 2 measures of like messing with the teenager's hair before they're like, Mom, I know no one is even around right now, but like this is too much.
There would occasionally be like something over here or something, you know, and it just like my motherly instincts would just kick in and I'd just start picking stuff off.
She'll get like the crust out of my eye like while we're trying to finish the song. I'm like, Jane, we are on Broadway trying to finish the song. Like, sleep in my eye is fine.
I couldn't have you out there looking crazy, baby.
I think the biggest lesson about that relationship for me is how much a parent will sacrifice for their child. And it is done in a very comedic way. It's addressed in a very comedic way, but man, Mama has really put her own life on hold for her son's sake. So
Pretty much.
here's to all the moms and dads out
Yeah.
there. So James, I wanna bring it to you. We've heard from some of the other actors who played lots of characters. Can you talk about some of the various characters that you get to embody and making that switch, and just talk a little bit about that experience for you?
Yeah. So my track is really cool because I get to play Luke, who, you know, like Sally is a more grounded kind of character. Like he is our antagonist, but he's someone that I can bring a lot of truth to. And a lot of honesty to that character. And then on the flip side, I get to play evil villains, Gabe Ugliano, Smelly Gabe, Ares, the god of war, which is just the most like ridiculous like I can be. With Ares, it's literally like I can't be too big with him because he is a god. And, like he's just so brazen, and so it's like self-involved, and I love being able to be as ridiculous, and we've created this incredible safe space where we're able to just like try out anything, and then nothing is too crazy, and if it is, like we'll reel it back, or, like we'll figure out ways to like make a character work. But
Did you mention that you also have a James Brown cameo?
I dare you.
There are, like I'm saying, the others in the show, like there are so many fun.
Yeah, I get to play James Brown, which has been a very interesting journey because it didn't look like James Brown off Broadway, and it didn't look like James Brown on tour, but now the wig is brilliant.
Yeah, he came on the other night and I was like, oh my god! It is James Brown!
We called him Maxine
Yeah,
Waters.
everyone called me Maxine Waters for a really long time. Auntie Maxine. No, but our wig department is on point, and I take off that scarf, and everyone knows who I am. And I don't have to do any work. It's great. I also get to play Mozart, which I've just made so
Yeah,
good.
what's going on with Mozart? I actually do have a question about that. What is happening?
Mozart is transitioning into like a drag queen.
Yeah, I see that. We live.
We've been silently watching this and had no clue what was going on with Mozart, but now we know Mozart is.
Stephen will have no three after this.
Dragon.
I have. Yeah, it's changed a lot. But no, we get to play with all these different crazy characters, and then I get to settle back into Luke, which is, you know, more like, truthful moments that I get to play that are more based off of my own experience and life. So it's a great juxtaposition. Thank you.
Jarrell, do you have something to add? You just like made a big gasp.
Oh, I love the word juxtaposition. That was
Amazing.
it. That's so sweet.
I know. I love words too, and I mean it. And actually, I was just about to ask Joe about the language in the book and the language in the book of the musical, not to be confused with the novel. So when you were, especially when you were starting, and this was going to be an hour-long thing, you obviously can't include every detail from the book. When it came time to expand the show back, did you use material from the book that you'd left out the first time around, or did you expand from your own imagination, a little bit of both?
Yeah, I mean, we packed a ton in that hour-long show. You know, there used to be a song called "In the Same Boat," an hour-long version that like basically took you from camp all the way to the underworld. You know, where they're just like, you know, a kid, all these characters are just like one-line cameos in the song. You know, in the Broadway version, there's a song called "Drive" that accomplishes the same function, which is how do you fit like 8 chapters worth of a quest into like a 4-minute road trip musical montage. But you know, when we were expanding it, our first thought was like, oh my god, we get to include Echidna, and we get to include, you know, the mattress salesman, and all these things that we had sort of not had time for in the hour-long version. Like we can expand, Echidna, instead of just being a one-line cameo, we can have that whole scene, we can have her see like perform water and see the Nereid, and the rainbow phone. So we actually wrote all these scenes, and then we actually realized that even though we now had, you know, an additional 45 to 60 minutes to tell the story, but actually what we didn't want was we didn't need more plot. What we needed was more time living with the characters. And then so Rob went away and wrote, you know, the songs that to me are now like the core of the show, which is "Good Kid," Percy's song, "My Grand Plan," where we, you know, Percy hears from Annabeth, and you know, the campfire song where all the campers, you know, sort of vent out what it's like to have a god for a parent. And those things, they're not moving the plot forward, but they're getting to live with the characters. You know, for me, you know, even though the weird challenge of adapting this is that, you know, with so many books in this world, there's so much we know about the characters. So like, how do you condense that? But actually, that ended up being a gift because, like, you know, for example, you know, in the Lightning Thief, we don't get a chapter from Annabeth's point of view. It's entirely told through Percy. But yet, you know, in the later series, we do get in Annabeth's head, and so, you know, I had the benefit of knowing what it's like to be in Annabeth's point of view, and that could help inform how I wrote her character and how Rob wrote her song. So, you know, it ended up not being about, you know, a kid that still makes like a one-line appearance. You know, so we still like try to cram in as many cameos as we can because they're fun for us to like be like, hey, like we sing the Lotus Hotel, and here's, you know, but you know, ultimately when we expanded, it was about how can we really let these characters feel as like dimensional as possible.
I definitely went in the first time I saw the show, and I was like, we better have the Chimera. I'm very glad that you have that.
You know, in the hour-long version, the Chimera was just like a can of like those like snakes that pop up.
No, it was actually a stuffed animal chihuahua, and she pulled the head off, and then the snakes came out of its head. It's a frightening prop.
Is any of that like on YouTube or anything? Like, is there any old promo footage that the like real nerds for the musical can go back and watch? I'd love to see some of that.
We did like the hour-long version. We did a benefit concert for the very first hour-long version. We had like a mad, crazy list of like Terrence Mann played higher. It was like
Broadway
ball. Richard Kim cameoed as Gabe for like the three lines that Gabe has. Like it was like Broadway All-Stars doing the only time that the show had been done with different people playing each role. And footage of that is like floating around the Theaterworks YouTube channel. So if they're like Broadway fans who want to know what it was like
I'm gonna dig it up and I'm gonna tweet it.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of songs that we've got. I think, like 30 songs or something that we've got.
I've heard a couple of them and they're good. I think maybe you're gonna need to do like a cabaret of pet songs.
The B-side.
I have a question about just the relationship between Joe and Rob. Like,
I'm pretty sure it's platonic.
She's good.
For a long time.
But with like such a huge plot to get through, and especially with the hour long, and then when you beefed it up, like I feel like there's such an importance on like structure and efficiency. What was the relationship like between you guys when it came to? Because I feel like Joe, you're really good at just being like blank space, assign someone else to it. Like good luck filling this. Was that the relationship with you? Rob, do you feel like, were you like given almost like plot assignments, or did you guys like work together working on the structure?
Working with Joe is like one of my favorite kind of collaboration. When a book writer will actually give you like a scene and I can go ahead and cannibalize that scene. Like there was a day in rehearsal where we were doing a scene that Joe had written for Mr. D. We decided to be able to get exposition out in a fast way. You know, obviously, comedy is helpful for that, especially in the world building of things. So like that moment in camp in the one act was very much like majestic and this thing that Chiron did. And we wanted it to be like thrown rapid fire at Percy through Mr. D, which is like the last person in the world that he should be getting that information from in the funniest way, right? And so he wrote the scene, and I went while they were rehearsing in another room, and I cannibalized it and like wrote that song based on like literally dialogue that he had, used it as a hook. You know, there are other moments where, you know, there are these big montages where, you know, our old, I think it was, I can't remember, it was like Patrick, or it might have been Steven, or it might have been our artistic director, Barbara Pasternak, who was just like, Rob, fix it. And I'm like, fix what? They're like, we need to get from camp, or we need to get from the underworld to a battle on a beach with Ares all the way back to camp, and we need it to connect in one song. And I'm like, are you, and we had this like, and it has to be due in 2 days, and there's producers coming, and fix it. And I'm like, and I remember we were at dinner, and I said to Joe, immediately, my first reaction is, I can't do this, and then I just figure it out and I make it happen. But my MO is to freak out. But Joe, I said, I need a title. I need something to wrap it around, because I structure songs like essays. So I need a hook, and then the hook is the thesis, and everything will connect it. And Joe said, Son of Poseidon. And I was like, oh. He's like, he's forgiving his dad, and he finds the gift, that's his sign. So then I had the motif, the musical motif of their sign, that's a seashell, great. Then that is the thing that gets him onto the beach. Then he claims his ownership of his identity. So now he's forgiving his dad, and he's now using being empowered of claiming who he is and his birthright to get him through that sequence. And then, that is the thing that he then embraces his power, and we use the strong theme from his mom and the Poseidon theme from his dad. At the very end, he uses his power in the ocean, and that's what gets him to be Ares and defeats him, and that gets us through. But it's all because of that one hook, that one idea. But it was all set up because Joe was like, I know the unifying moment that can help me through all that. So sometimes it's a hook or a thing like that. Sometimes it's a full scene. And in other cases, you know, I know Joe is busy on another project, but he was like, I know you want to write Percy's song when he's kicked out of camp. Just go and do it. So Good Kid was me on my own, just thinking about that moment where Percy was kicked out of camp. And I was like, I know what to do here. I don't need the scene. I know what to do here because I've been in that position before where I felt like those things. So it's a nice collaboration.
Rob is like one of the, I worked with a lot of new musical theater writers. Rob is like the fastest complete songwriter I've ever met. He will come back after a lunch break or a night and have like a gorgeous, completely acceptable song ready to go. It literally is mind-blowing.
Acceptable.
Please note that
They seldom are with new writers, you know what I mean?
Completely acceptable.
It's decent.
Chris, can you put into words what was going on in your brain while Rob was explaining that? Because everyone was laughing because your face was like you were having a revelation.
It was a seaweed brain moment.
It just like blows my mind, like all the work that goes into like making a cohesive piece of theater. Cause like I pick up where they leave off, and I have a ton on my plate of like micro good luck moments, you know what I mean? Like, good luck getting the seashell out of the bag and making it seem like you had this revelation and remembering it and getting the audience to understand that, and now you have to blow in it, and actually, can you time it out with the sound effects so it really looks like you're blowing? There's all this micro problem solving that I come in and do, that we all do, for the next level, and then by the time it reaches you guys, there's so many people that have like gone in and like eaten and like fixed all these problems. So I'm already overwhelmed by like our tasks, and so then taking it like the next step further and realizing how much problem solving has gone on before it even touches our eyes just like kind of makes me have a mini meltdown. I can't even walk through it. But it's like, how does a 2.5 hour show, or however long our show is, take you through that whole, plot so well? So I don't know.
It's about 2:15, including an intermission.
Yeah.
2:15, tight.
And we're at the Longacre Theater, Chris, just in case.
I want to talk to those of you who do all that incredible stage combat. I think that's mostly Kristen, James, and Sarah Beth. I know you worked with a choreographer, or a fight choreographer, and a regular choreographer, and a fight captain, and a dance captain, and what is that like? It's also like, it's not just stage combat, it's stage combat set to music?
Set to music with like real metal swords and weapons that like, if you are even like the slightest bit off, someone gets stabbed and like sent to the hospital.
They're not sharp, but they are hard.
But they're metal, so
Yeah.
like, and with the force that we're swinging them, like, so we've just spent so much time on safety with Rod Kinter, who is our fight choreographer, and then when we took it on the road, I was fight captain, so I kind of had to like maintain the safety aspects of everything like that, but it
Even
was
for
a
the scenes you're
surprising
not in,
amount.
right?
What's that?
Even for the scenes you're not in.
Even for the ones that I'm not in, but I am in like most of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a surprising amount of work that I wasn't I didn't realize how much of the show was going to be like figuring out these fights and like how intricate they are and how much safety is like the biggest concern with all this stuff. Like we just want to make things look cool, but everything has to be like over top this layer of safety so that we don't hurt each other. And it takes a long time to figure that stuff out. So for the 4 of us who were a part of the Lortel off-Broadway production, we've had 2 years to kind of let those fights sit in our bones. But for the newer people in our cast, like, they've had to figure it out so fast and just like run with it. And so it's been such a
That was another thing for Ryan, me, and Jarrell. I think when we came into the sort of tour aspect of everything, there's so much information with it. So it was a process of these guys, there's like old hat to them. So we were literally like in the corner going over lines and like, wait, what do we do when we do this? And I think maybe about 3 months into the tour, I finally figured out what I was doing. Not a moment before then, but it's just that with the flight choreography, the regular choreography, the information, everything you're given, it is a lot of information. And if you're not on stage giving that information, you're backstage frantically putting on something else and getting ready to come back out. So
it's a whole other layer to a musical, like that most musicals don't have, which is really cool. So we'll be in a rehearsal room and working on scene work, and then we bounce to Rob to work on music stuff, and then we go to the next room to like do fight choreography for 2 hours, and it's just like this constant like information overload and just figuring it all out. So
And
I
they're just
understand
singing
why
their spaces
Yeah,
all
that's what I was
at the
gonna
same
say.
time.
Like you see
Put on my resume called Battle Skrelting. I believe we invented that in the show. For me, like, definitely a big part of it is like I just have to be in really good shape before we start. Because like just cardiovascularly, I will not be able to sing the end of Put You in Your Place if I don't have all that kind of already going on for me. And it's true. I mean, I love theater like the most because it's the most inherently collaborative art form, I think. And Put You in Your Place is truly a great example of like, there is no one person in the world who possesses all of the expertise you would need to make that number. Because like our fight choreographer, Rod, is incredible at making fights look super, badass, but also be very safe. Our regular choreographer, Patrick, knows how to move bodies in space in a way that looks really dynamic and cool. But they're two different people, right? The one, and then also like our music director, Wiley, needs, like various musical things to go on at exactly the right time in the music. And so, it was really gratifying to be the actor who has to execute it all, because you get to have so much input into what's going on, because ultimately you are the vessel through which all of these people's input and ideas gets filtered, and also the person who's putting your literal body on the line every night. So yeah, every night when we finish that number, I feel like I have won a huge victory.
And not to mention too, I don't fight a lot with the weapons. I do a lot of flailing and fleeing. However, I did have like a little learning curve, because I have this giant puppet that kind of acts like my legs, but only bends in certain directions. And
your goat legs.
Yeah, the goat legs. And so a good week or so, we were not only was I learning how to move in them, but we were also making things different with the puppets, because at some point during Capture the Flag, I had broken one of the legs from just sitting and trying to get up because there was not enough elastic. And so it's like we were not only learning choreography for dance, and then they were learning the fight choreography for safety, and then I was also like, hey, my leg's broken, can we fix this? And so it was just like this hodgepodge of like problem solving.
So you consider that a puppet as opposed to a costume?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It's really cool. It clips on at my waist, and then it has a series of Velcro straps that attach it to my thighs and my ankles, and then the shoe, I have 2 pairs of shoes. One of them is specifically for rigging with the goat legs. And so I put those on, and then those get strapped to my ankles, and then, I kind of have to alter just the way that my legs are working so that I don't break them again, because they're expensive. And so it was, that was another learning curve for it. So Put You in Your Place was probably one of my favorite things to learn in this show, because it was just a constant state of chaos, but good chaos.
Did you spend any time watching a lot of goat videos on YouTube?
I did, but only because Brackett had me falling those goats that get and then
what goats faint?
He doesn't watch those videos.
There are so many fun. There's goat Instagram is.
Goats are amazing. There is one video in particular that I really love, and I wish I could do in the show, but I just do not have the athletic ability to. And there was just one where it was just a goat bouncing around, and then he just jumps off of another goat, pushes that goat over, and then hops away. And I was like, I wish I could do that.
That would be pretty good for the statue scene.
If only I can get my legs up that high.
Okay, so wait, I just don't want to skip over the fact that, Rob, under your breath, we were talking about the swords, that you were like, oh, Chris got stabbed. Chris, do you want to take that one, or?
I got stabbed.
I see these rehearsal reports, and I just pray to God. I'm just like, oh, please don't let anybody get hurt.
So that was just in rehearsal?
That was on stage.
And you just keep on going?
I took a breath, and then I was like, don't be a baby. Come on, fight.
You've grown so much. When he first joined on this crazy tour, he was like, I'm not falling that many times, you guys. And now he's throwing himself all over the place. So proud of you.
That's growth.
Well, Kristen, didn't you break a rib and put a hiccup in your daily routine?
I stabbed James. And I was like, you have a motorcycle suit on. It couldn't have hurt that bad. And he's like,
Chris
look at this bruise.
Stabs me and says, oh, that hurt? This stabbed me. It hurt.
That is a real knife. He has a crash suit on. I was like, that couldn't have gone through your motorcycle.
Armor. It's not armor, it's a fabric costume.
All right, I'm sorry for stoking that fire. I want to know, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to hear from each one of you which of the gods, the actual Greek gods, you identify with most in the framing of this question is going to be, if you found out that one of your actual parents was one of the Greek gods, which one would you like not that surprised to find out it is? Brian, do you want to start?
Sure, Hades.
Just come back down.
That's both the actual god and Hades in our show. He is a misunderstood guy. And you had to go to the basement for eternity, but got to listen to some really cool music when you were down there. Eventually you'd start resenting some people too. But yeah, and like the line in the show, you know, with each new war, his own kingdom expands, and he does get lonely. And so, yeah, definitely Hades would be mine.
I am a total child of Athena. Sorry, Dad. I mean, yeah, if you spend like any time with me, you know, you may come up with the adjectives insufferable a little bit. I like, you know, explaining things. I read a lot. I consider myself to be an intellectual. I like super feminist, super like, yeah, all of that. So, Athena's totally.
I always say that I am a true child of Hermes. Hermes is the jack of all trades god. He is the god of messengers and thieves. And, not that I'm a thief. Athletes, like I just identify with Hermes so much, just being kind of all over the place, and then also I'm a little mischievous, and I'm a very good liar. I'm just really good at like being deceitful.
She's really nice.
He actually is really nice. I would say I would be a daughter of Apollo because I love the sun. Give me an island beach any day. But no, I don't know. I always feel like I'm moving and going and sort of like clockwork with the sun rising and setting. Would definitely be daughter of Apollo.
I'm definitely a son of Poseidon. I heavily
Chris.
Thank you so much. I heavily identify with water. I'm a Southern California boy through and through, and whenever I'm having a bad day, just being near the beach, near the water, having my feet in it, I'm always rejuvenated. I like to, my feelings and emotions and everything about me ebbs and flows as quickly as water does. I can fit in any container, you're welcome. And so I just always related with water.
What does that even mean?
Like, what does that
mean? Putting that to the test tonight.
I can fit into most social settings. That's how
I'm picturing like suitcases to I'm like, fit into my carpet bag. Like, what?
I'll do it.
At 3:45, he's gonna get
He's
into
a
a series of
Pisces.
suitcases.
This is gonna be like, I'm a
I know. I was like fitting the boxes. Oh, Lord.
yeah, I'm a Poseidon through and through.
Even though, you know, she probably wouldn't have kids, but let's just pretend she does. I'd be a daughter of Artemis, daughter of the hunt, the moon. She's just very, very cool, and I like her kind of like very earthy, natural vibe. And, you know, if you get to be a daughter of the hunt, just like live forever. She's awesome.
Upon further research, I think I would be the son of Apollo, because I'm trying to like think back to like the first time I had like instincts in something, and people were like, "Whoa!" And it was in English class, and we had to come up with metaphors, and everyone went around and was like, "My kitten is as soft as my mom's hair," and it got to me, and I was like, "Reality is like the lapping shore." I forget what I said, but I was like in 5th grade, and I remember my English teachers were like, "Oh, nice." And then the next day we did it again, and they called me after class, and they're like, "We thought you stole that from somewhere, and you just regurgitated it." And I was like, "No, that's how I think." So I feel like that my first instincts was like in metaphor and poetry and the arts, and put me in a windy place, and I'm happy. So I would say that, but that's a new development.
Who did you think you were before?
Oh, I used to like scramble and be like, I like camping, so maybe I'm the son of Pan. I was just like, next question, I don't know. But not water. That's like the biggest testament to my acting, is feeling like good with water. I'm like, what's in there, sharks? I'm not good with water. You should. I went swimming once with my boyfriend, and he was like, oh, if they could just see you now. I was like, I feel like I'm drowning.
Thank you for reenacting it for us today. I want these answers from you three too.
Dionysus?
I'm surprised it took all the way to this end.
I know, I feel like
say
something deep
Dionysus.
saying it, but I spend my life in the theater, and I love it. And I like a cocktail, too!
Drama, baby. How about you, Jen?
That's totally my answer too. He's also the most fun character to write for. Like, if I could just write the entire show with just Mr. D, or write Mr. D's one-man show, I would just, you know, just...
I mean, now you have to do it.
He's so
Yeah,
fun.
cabaret shot.
Theater.
Rob?
I'd want to be Apollo, but I have a feeling it'd be Hades through and through.
More about that.
I'm a Halloween boy. I'm a boy. Spooky and dark, and I always feel misunderstood, even when people understand me. I still feel misunderstood.
What do you, I don't know what you mean.
Next question.
You guys all do feel sort of supernatural up there. I can say from having been in the audience as many times as I have, it is like watching people who are more than human. I think that is true for anybody who has the nerve to get up on a stage. I think anybody doing it 8 times a week is a superhero. But there is something extra about what the 7 of you are doing on that stage, using the work that the 3 of you have created, that makes it feel like maybe the gods are real. Everybody, come see the Night of the Week at the Long Acre Theater, now in previews, opening October 16th, running until early January. Get your tickets now. The show is incredible. Thank you all so much for being here.